There's a country you can drive all the way around in a single day, and you'd never leave South Africa while doing it. Lesotho isn't a province, a state, or a territory. It's a fully independent kingdom, completely surrounded on every side by one other nation. And the reason it still exists at all comes down to one king outsmarting an empire. In 1824, a chief named Moshoeshoe I made a decision that would define Southern African history for the next century and a half. Rather than trying to hold flat, exposed ground against rival groups during a period of regional upheaval, he moved his people to Thaba Bosiu, the mountain at night, a plateau with steep, defensible cliffs. From that stronghold, he built alliances and absorbed refugees and smaller chiefdoms from the surrounding chaos, forging what became the Basotho nation. For decades, Moshoeshoe held his mountain kingdom together through diplomacy as much as defense. He was known for negotiating rather than simply fighting whenever he could. But by the 1850s and 60s, his kingdom faced a new kind of pressure. Boer settlers, descendants of Dutch colonists, pushing into Basotho farmland from the newly formed Orange Free State to the west. A series of wars over the 1850s and 60s, sometimes called the Free State-Basotho Wars, cost Moshoeshoe's kingdom significant land. By 1868, with his kingdom in real danger of being absorbed outright by the Boers, Moshoeshoe made the decisive play. He appealed directly to the British Empire, asking Queen Victoria to take Basutoland, as it was then called, under British protection. Britain agreed, declaring Basutoland a British protectorate in 1868, specifically to block the Boers' efforts to fold it into the Orange Free State. This is the single decision that explains why Lesotho exists today as its own country instead of as a region inside South Africa. In 1884, Basutoland's status was upgraded to a direct British Crown colony, administered separately from the neighbouring Cape Colony. And crucially, when Britain's various southern African territories merged in 1910 to form the Union of South Africa, Basutoland was deliberately left out. It had its own separate relationship with London, and it stayed that way for the rest of the colonial period. 3 other British-administered territories in the region were kept separate from South Africa for similar reasons. But Lesotho is the only one that ended up completely enclosed by South African territory on all sides. Basutoland stayed a British protectorate for nearly a century, through the era when South Africa itself was consolidating apartheid, a system Lesotho, notably, was never legally part of, precisely because of that 1868 decision. On October 4, 1966, Basutoland became fully independent as the Kingdom of Lesotho. Today, Lesotho remains one of only 3 countries on Earth completely enclosed by a single other country, alongside San Marino and Vatican City, both of which sit entirely inside Italy. But Lesotho's situation is arguably the more remarkable one. San Marino and Vatican City are tiny city-sized enclaves. Lesotho is a mountain kingdom of over 30,000 square kilometers, with its own currency, its own monarchy, and a population in the millions. A full nation-state that happens to have a 100% land border with exactly one country. The economic relationship today is deeply intertwined. Lesotho's economy relies heavily on South Africa for trade, employment, and even a shared currency peg. But Lesotho remains politically and legally its own sovereign nation, a UN member state with its own government, entirely because a 19th-century chief on a mountain fortress made a bet on the British Empire over his Boer neighbours, and won. One king, one mountain, one decision in 1868. And more than 150 years later, there's a fully sovereign country you could drive around in a single day, sitting entirely inside the borders of another nation. Lesotho isn't an accident of geography. It's the last visible trace of a 19th-century chess move that worked.